working with Scott and Brian over here on the Telly team for the last couple of weeks. We've gone back and forth in a lot of ways about these big changes that have been happening with 10 DLC and the campaign registry in particular. And as I mentioned during the warm up, even some of those things have changed in the last 24 hours. So really, we're here to be your trusted partner at Think and Telly as we come together to make sure that your messages get through, right? That you're scored appropriately, that your brands are registered, and all these things that are very new to the industry, happen for you. And we're here to, take the worry out of things, give you peace of mind, and make sure that your campaigns are set up and running efficiently and effectively. So just some quick introductions. My name is Tim McLean. I'm the Director of Marketing. And I'm really happy to be excited, first by Scott, our VP of Retention and Growth. Scott, welcome in.
Thank you. Welcome, everybody.
And same with Brian. He's been the man with the plan on the phone with the campaign registry. I think even today, right? Our GM of Enterprise Messaging.
Many hours this last week. So
yeah, just in the last week. So we've got some really hot new information to share with you that's important, and we're excited to get right in. So I'll go ahead and start here with kind of an overview, and I'll be the first to say, when I first joined thinQ, it's been a little bit over 3 years ago. We were, enabling folks to send messaging through P2P channels, right? It was those channels were normally reserved by the carriers for low volume P2P. That's person to person traffic, kind of phone to phone, right? Actual handset to handset. And over time, of course, we have, SaaS platforms and other customers who are obviously sending, application to person types of traffic, using toll free and short code. And so things got convoluted pretty quick, right, Brian? And there had to be a change. And it was this, P2P long code for commercial traffic that basically came into existence, right? This was the change that they made.
That is the change that they made. Yeah, they saw all the high volume A2P volumes coming through, and they said, we're gonna kind of pivot. We're gonna make a special platform specifically for this, and they came out with the A2P, and then 10 DLC as a result of that.
Right. Yeah, and it was their response because they basically had to do it because the traffic is different. It's meant to be used for different purposes. And so this came about, and it also, of course, gave them a chance to monetize it. Let's be real, but we'll go through kind of what those mean. But really, at the end of the day, we all know, and the carriers know that the mobile folks are gonna they're more likely to respond to local when it's coming from a local number, which is why they made this change to 10-digit long codes, right, for this traffic. And again, we've got the bullets here: lower number of messaging costs versus toll free and short code, which is why the long code is better for commercial traffic. Everybody wants increased capacity and throughput, across multiple numbers. And Brian, tell us a little bit more about this. Traditional P2P binds had minimal carrier filtering, right? So some of the traffic that necessarily should not have been delivered was being delivered, right? Because it was on a P2P channel.
Right. Everything was looking like it was person to person. So there was a high delivery rate. People liked it. And the industry and the mobile operators, and it comes, from the consumers, right? Everything the mobile operators are getting is based off of the complaints that come in from the consumers, and they started getting a lot of these messages that they're saying, hey, how did this happen? Why am I starting to get all this spam XYZ?
Yeah.
So
that's right. And that's, to be honest, guys, that's why we came up with this theme, that it's really is the Wild West. It really has been. And as sort of this new pioneer town has been settled, there's still a lot of dust being kicked up, and we're still trying to figure out how to have ourselves a civilization here in the Wild West of 10 DLC and texting. So with that in mind too, so that this has basically led to the campaign registry, right? So really it's, carriers moving away from unsanctioned long codes. So they basically launched, 10 DLC as sanctioned application to person messaging services, right? So that traffic is being handled the right way. Now, they're requiring the campaign registry so that they know who's sending and what is being sent. So that the carriers can understand who is actually allowing this traffic to occur. And really, we're at the point now where you have to register your campaign to make sure that they're fully supported. And I love this. What are the downsides and upsides? The downside is it's a little bit more work. The costs have definitely increased, and unfortunately, so has confusion, because again, these rules keep on changing. We don't know how long it's going to be before this all settles down into a consistent registry, sort of, a process for how these things work. But it feels like we're nowhere near to that happening soon. But in the meantime, we're here to help guide you and again, give you that peace of mind. So the upsides, we all agree, I think, are very positive. So we want to get rid of spam that's competing for delivery to the handset. And honing your approach is going to allow more messages to shine through, shine brightly, actually be delivered. And that's really what we all care about, is when we're sending our messages, we want to make sure that delivery is improved and your conversions also are improved as a result.
Yeah, and just to touch on that real quick, yeah. Tim, if
sure.
I'm jumping in, is that really historically with the changes, right? P2P started getting all the heavy filters. A2P came in and said, hey, look, if you're sending good traffic, we want to make sure that that's going through. And, something that Scott's always said, which I fully agree with, is if it looks like spam, smells like spam, it's going to get flagged as spam, right? And so we live in this world now where we have examples of real legitimate traffic that is clean and completely appropriate that was being flagged as spam just because of what it looked like, when in reality it was real traffic. And so one of the big upsides is that your pass-through, right, your delivery rate's going to go up as long as you're going and getting these approved through the campaign. And you hit the nail on the head with, this is now a mobile operator sanctioned product through the campaign registry, right? Previous to this, it wasn't a sanctioned product. So you can go to the mobile operators and say, hey, I'm having delivery issues. Right? They're going to say, well, why are you sending that traffic? If it's, they might cause, raise some eyebrows. But if you've gone through the process and it's been vetted and it's clean, you can now kind of hold the mobile operator's feet to the fire on that deliverability and say, hey, this was approved by a sanctioned partner of yours. I'm going to hold you accountable to getting this stuff through. So that's another part of the campaign registry, of being a sanctioned partner of the mobile operators, is that now there is some responsibility on the operator side.
Right. Very good points. Very good points. And Brian, too, if you could kick us off here too. We know that there's some somewhat confusing, terminology here along 10 DLC is what we're talking about. Could you kind of walk us through what, who the players are?
Sure. And one of the biggest things here is going to be the brand, right? And this will dictate how you are doing business, depending on what kind of business you are. Are you the actual brand, or do you represent the brand? This will factor into what your deliverability looks like across your business. If you're just a brand, if you say, hey, I own this business, and the public and the people I'm sending messages to perceive me as the brand, then I need to be registering directly as the brand. So that's one of the biggest components of the campaign registry, is the understanding of what a brand is. And it also plays into pass-through rates and number pulling as well. Each mobile operator does things a little bit differently. T-Mobile is it's brand-based, and with AT&T, it's daily limit-based, right? So they're a little bit different on how they both play the game. So that's why we call it the Wild West. Each mobile operator is kind of making their own rules on how they want to implement some of this stuff. The CSP, that's kind of what we are. We're going to enable people to be able to get access to the mobile networks. We have all the connections with the DCAs, right, the aggregators. So we're one of the few companies out there that really does have connectivity with all of these partners to have access to the mobile networks. MNO, you might hear that. That just means the mobile network operator, your T-Mobile, Verizon, AT&T's. Resellers, that's the other side of the brand. And so this is kind of a big issue, understanding if you're a reseller or if you're a brand. If you're a marketing company, right, and you have multiple brands that you're marketing for, well, you don't want to be limited to the daily thresholds of your brand or your text per minute from AT&T. So to really get the most out of the platform, it's to become a reseller and then register all of your brands individually. So you're not restrained and relegated by, just saying you're one brand. But if you have these different brands, each brand now is going to be relegated to its daily limits. So it actually increases your pass-through as a business because you're the one that has the contract with the brand. We don't, right? So that's another way of looking at it is am I a reseller? Am I a brand? If I'm a reseller, that typically means I have, because I have the contract with the brand themselves, and I'm going in and really if you're representing multiple brands, that is really the best way to increase the amount of pass-through you're going to have as an overall business, because now it's not solely based on you. The campaign registry was built out of a company called Calera that branched out and is now basically the gatekeeper for the registration to the mobile networks. Verizon did just sign up. I believe they signed their contracts 2 weeks ago. They just had their onboarding call, their first onboarding calls last week. And so what I've gotten from that, though, is going to be business as usual. So you won't see a lot of stuff in here for Verizon. Right now, they're telling us it's business as usual with the flat rate surcharge. They're just going to be using this as kind of a repository for, looking at the campaigns that are being submitted. So,
great. All right, Brian, that's fantastic. So terminology down. Let's take it sort of one step deeper.
We had a quick question come in here. Is a perceived message sender the official verbiage standard?
Oh, there you go.
That it is the official verbiage. It's who is sending the message. So if you had Nike as a customer and you're sending something out and it's appearing to be Nike, you should be a reseller at that point, signing up Nike as a brand, not setting up a brand as Nike on the account, right? Because we don't have anything. We aren't the ones with the relationship with Nike at that point. You might be, right? We're not. Yeah. And so you're reselling that brand.
Yeah. So the question was, is perceived message sender the official verbiage or standard when determining the brand, right? So yeah, you got that. Okay.
The question was, so someone asked us, is perceived message sender the official verbiage standard when determining brand, or is that a watered down definition? There you go, Chris. I guess they can't see the questions that are coming up.
Yeah.
But that's the official. That's the official verbiage from them, is who is the brand, right?
Gotcha.
So this works. The way this works, you can kind of look at the top row here is your registry. You're going to go through the campaign registry, and you are going to first register your brand, right? Before you can start registering campaigns, you're going to register your brand. That brand gets pushed out. Again, you're going to see how it's published. It's going to go to the direct carrier aggregates. Those are the upstream gateway providers that we work with. And then eventually it's going to go to the OSR, the override service records, right? So basically working with net number to say, hey, these numbers are approved. And that's another thing that we can touch on, is that snowshoeing is something that happened a lot in the past. This actually brings up the point of now, because of throughput, you don't have to have a lot of numbers to get the same throughput. Numbers don't correlate into throughput anymore. It is a thing of the past. They used to try to, make different campaigns to increase capacity. So that's another thing that they've gotten rid of. Now, on the other side, just so I can touch on that while I'm speaking about that, is there is number pooling, and T-Mobile and AT&T both do that differently. And if you need, say you represented a large fast food chain and you needed multiple numbers because you wanted to see responses by locale or per store and see what that looks like, there are ways to submit forms to the mobile operators to do that. They both have different internal processes. T-Mobile is structured a little bit differently. So anything over 49 numbers needs to go through that special pull request. AT&T does it by campaign, which defaults at, from what I was told, around 5,000. So if you had 10,000 stores, you'd most likely have to create 2 separate campaigns. But with T-Mobile, it's a direct request to T-Mobile because of their internal review process on their side. So once everything gets published and it goes live and there's the updated OSR data with net number, again, that's how they're going to say this number is tied to this campaign. And so now we know what vertical it was. We know how to bill it. Then you're going to go live after everything's been approved. So the way they're tying everything together is kind of an important thing to realize, that it's not just make a campaign, make a brand, make a campaign, start sending messages. You have to tie the numbers to the campaigns in order for them to complete, because that lives. And if you're familiar with voice, net number is basically like the LERG, right, for text messaging. And it'll attach the actual campaign ID to the number in the OSR to verify that it's been approved to send the messages.
Gotcha. All right. So we got the process.
Okay. We have another question that came in. Do we want to take these questions now, or do we want to wait till the end?
I usually hold them, but if we want to, here, let me read it out here. So Ezra's asking, what's the difference between a brand and a campaign? They're a web developer.
So the difference between a brand and a campaign is you as a brand will, and we're right here on the slide. So Ezra, let me go through this, and hopefully that answers your question. If not, let's circle back to make sure that you have that question answered. So this is one of the changes that just happened, right? And what was happening is you would go in and register your brand, which is basically your company. Your company can have multiple campaigns, but you're going to go and register basically your business as a brand. They were attaching a brand score based off of a few different public registries to make sure that you are who you say you are. And what they were noticing from the mobile operators, they were saying, hey, people are registering, they're getting a brand score, it's a low score, and those low score businesses are the ones still sending bad traffic. So they said, why are we turning these people up with low scores? They obviously haven't been vetted correctly through the onboarding process. So what they've now changed is now there's 3 statuses that you can have within the campaign registry, and that's verified, unverified, and then vetted verified. And I'll get into the vetted part a little bit later. And I tested this out. I actually went in. I have my own personal business. I plugged in my EIN. I plugged in my address. And then a common misconception people might have, because they might work for a company, but they might not understand the full legal name, or they don't have the actual address. They might have a satellite office address or the non-corporate address. They work out of an office and they just think, okay, this is the office address and this is our company name, when in reality, they could have a different legal name and a corporate address that was filed, with the Secretary of State or with, the IRS when they were getting and applying for their EIN. So I went in and I tested this, and I used just my marketing name for the business name with the correct EIN and address. And I came back with a brand score of 26, which is really low. And I went and I made one change, and I changed the legal name to the correct name with the correct EIN and address. And brand score of 86, I was immediately verified to send traffic. So they are monitoring that stuff with, these different regulatory agencies to make sure that this data matches. So your brand is your business. It's your EIN, right? It's your corporate address. It's your real legal business name. They want to see who's sending the message. And if you're a reseller, that's stuff that you're going to have to register with the businesses that you're working for, right? You're gonna have to go and get that information and say, hey, I'm going to need this information to register your brand as a reseller. And you want to make sure that in that exercise you're discussing that with them, because again, at the end of the day, we want to enable you to be as successful as possible with your customers. And so our goal is to make you successful with your customers, and understanding those nuances and how to get that done. Again, like being a reseller and getting through that stuff is really our top concern, is making sure that we can help educate you guys in the process of how to be get the best pass-throughs and everything you can. Vetting is another thing. So actually, I think we're going to get that on another slide here. But again, there are types of campaigns you can register for different verticals. Right now, like emergency notifications, I think AT&T is waiving some of those things. T-Mobile is not. You still get the fees for that. So depending on the type of campaign, you can have a different outcome on text per minute, text per second, pass through, and things of that nature.
Hey, Brian, just before we get to the last two bullets here, Dimitri's asking, what if the brand is a person like a VIP or a member of government who doesn't have an EIN?
So, good question. That's a new update that they've also added to the platform. It doesn't have as high as pass-through rates, right? But there is a sole proprietorship where it doesn't require an EIN. Your pass-throughs aren't going to be as high. And I'm still getting the information on, I don't know if they're going to be doing that by social security number or not, but there's a way to do it as a sole proprietorship that has not registered. Because not all states require a small business to go and register, right? You can just have a sole proprietor take all the pass through. So there is an option for that, and it's still being built out. That's a pretty new one, but that is a nice change that they did make. And we can get Dimitri's information and try to do a follow-up with him on some of the updates we have, and we'll probably post some of those updates as they come through. But good question. Something that was a current update on their side to help businesses without an EIN. And if you're from Europe, if you're not from the United States and don't have an EIN, you can use your VAX number, I think, as well, right? Is that what it's called? The
VAD, VAT.
Yeah, your VAD number. You can if you're not US based, you can still use that as well to register your traffic.
Hey, Brian, tell us a little bit more. You have here type of campaign and campaign urgency. What do those mean?
The campaign urgency, just depending on you know what? I think that we meant to update that one, so let's hold off on that one real quick.
That's no problem.
No fees. Really, what that's going to get to is all the mobile network operators are coming up again. That goes to the Wild West theme, right? They all have their own interpretation of what they want to charge. They're all coming up with a different surcharge based on, is it short code? Is it long code? Is it toll free? Is it MMS? Is it SMS, right? There's a lot of different variables on how they are going to be implementing those pass-through fees and surcharges, right? So there's no standard in the ecosystem. They're all, and T-Mobile, for example, is both ways. It's in and out, which is interesting to me because in the world of voice, there was always an access charge if you owned the number. So I don't know if there's anyone that's going to be fighting on that front at all, but they all just have their own set of rules that they're putting on. And again, we're just trying to disseminate the information as it comes into us. We're not making the rules. We're just trying to help explain them and guide people and help them wade through the confusion. Right. You had started the conversation. So.
Yeah, I was going to make one point, and we have another question too, real quick. When I started, 3 years ago, everything was P2P, and now everything's gone A2P with 10 DLC. And guess what? There weren't any added surcharges back then either. And I remember being told, watch out, this is going to roll across all the carriers over time. And as of August 1st, it's rolled across most of our carrier partners are now charging surcharges. And a lot of them, as you say, are in and out as well. So that's brand new as of, right. 2 weeks ago. So it's changing in real time. A question from Ashish. Can you delete a brand from the TCR directly if the brand no longer wants to use SMS marketing? Or do we have to do it, for instance, like through Telly?
Well, the campaign registry isn't going to delete the brand, right? They're going to, again, and we'll get to that part in the vetting process a little later. They're building databases around this around businesses, right? They want to see what businesses are doing. They want to see who the people that are making some of the spam out there know. And so my guess is you can't really delete the brand. You can delete the campaigns. You can't delete the brand, right? So the thing is with a campaign is sorry, I just saw a question here.
Yeah.
Lost my train of thought on that. But 1 second here.
I'm kind of wondering if we can maybe kind of defer some of these with respect to time to the end,
Right.
so we can kind of, there's a lot of content to cover. So
Yep.
Yeah.
Chris, we'll get to your question. It's a good question here at the end. And
We actually
Brian,
have that.
let's.
But
sorry.
yeah, I mean, what I was going to say is that the campaigns are registered for 3 months at a time. So there's no way around that. If you're registering a campaign, you're going to pay for that campaign to be registered. You can select if it auto renews or not, but you do pay it quarterly. There's no way of just paying for it for a month. So
Okay. So let's go ahead and we'll move in here. So again, brand score, not a thing anymore, but walk us through what we got here.
And this will have more relevance on the upcoming slide that kind of shows you what kind of pass-throughs are available. What you're seeing a lot now are the top two, the A and Bs, which they consider being companies that are on the Russell 3000 list. And then some of the smaller, businesses that are E and F, right? Where your pass-through is significantly smaller than those top tier brands. Again, lower, you have a lot of these special brands, right? You have charity, social, like your 501c3s can be on there, your emergency notifications. If you have something special like that, then it's going to require another form, something that we're going to have to send into our DCAs for that approval, right? Because they're going to have to work with the mobile operators to get the approval to say, hey, this is okay. We're a special brand. We're getting this waived, right? We're exempt from surcharges and pass-throughs. And like I said, not every carrier operates the same way. They each are making their own rules. So these are the different messaging classes that you will get and from the mobile operators. And it's really important to look at the top here where it says messaging class AT&T, messaging tier T-Mobile, because again, they each do things their own way. T-Mobile, AT&T does a class, T-Mobile does a messaging tier. So those are the big differentiators between the two.
Gotcha.
And this is kind of just a quick little example of how the reseller works and how the brand works, right? So again, if you're a reseller, you can have all these different brands, and each one of those brands will represent the messaging, either the messaging tier or the messaging class from the mobile operator. So if you're a reseller and each one of those brands, say you have two on the Russell 3000, you have one that's just kind of a lower tier one, each one of those brands now is going to have its daily limit based on message class or messaging tier, rather than if you're just a brand, you're going to be relegated to just, that messaging class or messaging tier. And this kind of shows what I was just talking about, how they're going to look at that, right? People that are on the Russell 3000, which is kind of like your Fortune 500, it's a more inclusive group with 3,000 businesses. They're going to basically default you into that higher tier to allow you that bigger pass through. Your smaller ones are going to have a smaller limit. That being said, they are planning on increasing these limits from what I've been told this last week. So if there's some sticker shock there saying, hey, I'm only going to have, the certain amount of pass or text per minute, that is changing. And the other thing is you can vet the brand, the campaign, right? So you can go in and say, hey, I want this vetted. It's typically it's a $40 charge to vet it. It's a 250 point inspection basically on the business, which can be good and bad, right? It could be good and bad because if you have a history of complaints against you, they could actually come back and lower your TPS or your messaging tier or your messaging class, right? So that's another thing to think about when you're applying for the vetting, is that if you've had issues in the past, they could make an effect moving forward. But verifying that, and if everything's okay, they will increase your daily limits. You can increase those pass-throughs and change your messaging tier. So that's the good news about it, is that there are ways to increase that. again, that's not our rules. It's the rules that we've been given. So I'm just passing that along.
Right. Well, thanks, Brian. That's really good. Pretty technical information, but obviously you can see it is the Wild West. Things are changing. I appreciate the update. And Scott's going to walk us through, the all important how to maximize your application for approval for your campaigns.
Yep. So, hey, moving right along. So we'll just jump right into this part of it. So, as previously mentioned, the first critical component is to get your brand registered, and Brian and Tim outlined all of those steps. Brian also mentioned about the difference between not using your legal filed entity and putting a different, more of a maybe a marketing name or brand on your application, which can materially impact how you get scored, how you get vetted. So it's real critical to make sure that when you're filling out this paperwork, any legal name is used on that paperwork, or anything that you're going to be registering under that brand. Make sure the address and contact information are match as well. So those are pretty critical steps. The next step too, and we see this quite a bit, you'll be surprised of how many people try to submit their campaigns without having the mandatory TCPA components, right? And the biggest one that they're going to look at when you submit a campaign is, do you have the mandatory, this is not optional, the opt-out for the mobile subscribers. So your campaigns always have to have that stop to end or any other TCPA compliant opt-out messaging on there. So don't even submit a campaign for approval unless you have that in there. If that's going to stretch your character limits, adjust your content. And that's another part that we'll talk about here shortly, but very, very critical. Also, you want to make sure that you're aligning to the CTIA rules. So when you're submitting campaigns to be approved, they're going to look at the overall topics that you're sending content for. And we have a complete detailed breakdown of the CTIA, TCPA best practices on the Telly website. It's telly.net/acceptable use. We give you some ideas on how to structure your message content. So that's going to be real critical. There's a lot of, we call those forbidden categories under CTIA. That's all clearly outlined on our website. So you just want to make sure that you're not submitting something that's forbidden, because that's going to be almost immediate rejection of your campaign, which costs you time and money. So great content there. If you can advance us to the next one. One of the questions, I think this question just came up as well. So we're seeing a lot, even before this, the campaign registry is completely in production, is that we're seeing a lot of issues with people's traffic that are using non-verifiable business domains. So, even if you have an unfortunate, verified business domain that's, let's say, 30, 40 characters, you might want to look at getting maybe a shortened version of your business domain to help with that. But this is one of those things where I think, it kind of goes back to the first slide where, people were, businesses and marketers were basically using that technique called snowshoeing, where you basically have to change your source DID, your actual message content. So they were actually just spinning that content, changing it up a little bit so it didn't look like the last message that they just sent out 300 or 400 times. And then also using URL shorteners, right? And then spinning that URL. So under this whole new process, I think you don't necessarily have to do that anymore. So the use of shorteners is, if your brand's registered and you're getting your campaigns submitted and everything else matches up, you don't need to put in URLs that have, xyz /!.io in your campaign submission, because it's most likely going to get rejected to do that. So ideally, if possible, use verifiable business domains. The other thing too, and especially if you're looking for that additional vetting, you want the higher throughput, they're going to go to your website. They're going to go to your landing pages. They're going to check to see if you have privacy policies in place, and do the privacy policies aligned to CTIA and TCPA best practices. So if you're not sure what that looks like, again, we have some of that information on our website, or you can reach out to your account manager or someone, maybe open a support ticket, and we can kind of help you really align to what you really should have in your privacy policy. So
I would just reiterate that It's, if you're in the messaging business, you really just need to familiarize yourself with those CTA guidelines and the TCPA guidelines. Those are crucial for you to understand, right? Especially around section 5.1 with some of the opt-in stuff. Like you mentioned, they're going to be going and vetting you out and looking at some of these landing pages, your T's and C's. Are you just making these blanket statement opt-ins, which kind of break the rules or not? That's the stuff they're looking at right now. So you really want to make sure that you're looking at those guidelines and you are building your landing pages, T's and C's and everything appropriately.
Yeah, it's a real critical component, because when especially if you need to be able to process a large volume of message content, you're going to need that additional verification and vetting. They're going to look into this. You're probably going to get asked how, maybe provide proof. In fact, I just saw, literally, I think it was this morning, there was a new rollout from the campaign registry talking about getting maybe special use case. And I looked at the forum, and they're asking you for snapshots of your opt-in process. You're going to have to be able to verify that. So, there's a lot of stuff that you need to do to make sure that you have everything in order. So when you do, fill out those forms and you're asking for, additional content, that you have these things in order. So it's real critical for that. The other thing too, then, what they'll look at is if you're providing a sample case or a sample campaign, what your message sample looks like. If there's a URL on there, and if you've asked for additional vetting, especially, they're going to click the URL. They're going to track how many times that actually redirects. So this is in the affiliate marketing space or in the click ad space, that's something you want to be kind of, mindful of. If they see that your URL literally redirects 3 or 4 times and hits a landing page to spin a wheel to win a gift card, you're probably going to get rejected. So you want to make sure that everything really kind of aligns and is optimized for approval. And then moving on to the, of course, campaigning, making sure that your characters are fitting into the standard, best practices for SMS and MMS. So if your URL, that your verified business domain is, exceptionally long, and it does kind of stretch that limit, you want to make sure that, you change your content to align to that, so you can still get that 160 character in there, in addition to including to the mandatory TCP opt-out language. So pretty critical. One of the things too, that, of course, through this entire process, right, and one of the things that we bring to you, our customers and potential customers, is the value add of being able to do this registration process directly through the Telly customer portal. So this, just an important note, that this is not active on every account on the Telly side. If you're a legacy thinQ customer, or you don't have a Telly account, reach out to your account manager, open a support ticket. We'll work with you to get one created. And then, of course, the access to this particular page is not default on every account either. So if you want access and you want to start this process, you can reach out to us and we can activate that. We can also work with you to schedule a demo of it, and also potential walkthrough, so we can help you understand all the components of this particular page in detail. So you're going to get maximum efficiency from the process, and ideally, maximum approval on your campaigns. So I think that's it for me, Tim.
Great, thank you, Scott. So a few things you already mentioned. And we get this question a lot on the thinQ side, is we're coming together as 2 companies. thinQ customers. If you don't have access to Telly yet, you can reach out to your account manager. We'll get that created for you. If you are a Telly customer, but you don't see it, you can reach out to Telly. We'll make sure we turn it on for you, and we can do that walkthrough. That's great. And a lot of people are asking about the product roadmap. What does it mean, sort of short term and long term? And we're going to continue to communicate with you. Look for emails, watch for more webinars with Scott, Brian, and I. To share this information with you. And again, just to reiterate exactly what Scott just said, make sure you're looking at all the different registry requirements, as well as the CTIA and all the other components of how to create your messaging, and make sure you're in alignment. It's so that way when it goes into production and all this is available, that you're locked and loaded and ready to go. And last but not least, this is a good question we are starting to get now that the word has started to leak out about thinQ and Telly coming together, which we're going to be making a much more public announcement about this in the coming weeks, which is very exciting. Is that we are going to basically, our platforms are going to merge at some point, but that shouldn't cause anybody any concern. You're not going to have to reprogram anything. You're not going to have to change anything. And it's going to take, multiple months for the two platforms to basically come together. I don't have a date for you. We don't really know what that is yet, but we're not rushing it and we're not changing anything. So it's business as usual, onward, towards the North Star, and, we'll keep going. So
very, very important to reemphasize, Tim, that for all of our API customers, none of that's going to change.
Right.
So, no worries to, about being put into a situation where you've got to reprogram or reconnect everything. So all that's going to stay the same. So.
Right. The way we set up redundancy, the way we set up our installation, it's all, the way you've installed us now is going to continue to work, but new customers, you may see that the process may change a little bit, but if you're legacy, you're completely fine. It's not going to break. It's going to be completely fine. But that question does come up. We want to make sure you guys are sleeping okay at night. So a couple questions as we get in here into the Q&A. Let me make sure. I think, actually real quick. I don't know, Brian or Scott, you want to take this one? What's going on in September?
That's Brian.
Brian.
They're coming up with new stuff all the time. I think the actual next update happens in 2 days. They're going to release a few more things. They don't have a hard date when they're going to start actually requiring that, at least one that hasn't been sent out. What I'm hearing though is the beginning of Q4, where they're either going to be blocking the unregistered content or putting some sharp teeth into the pass-through cost. So something to keep in mind is this something you really want to hold off on until the end? You can start having delivery issues and some high penalty fees coming in your direction from the mobile operators that are basically saying, look, if it's not registered, it's not going through. And again, that was, with that change of verified, unverified. If you're not verified, you're not passing traffic. So,
I think a great add-on to that would be to, at the very least, and correct me if I'm wrong, Brian, but get your business, get registered, get your brand registered. If you're not quite ready to do the additional vetting and verification, you need to do some housekeeping, then great. But, start there, but absolutely start, start creating a roadmap for yourself and for your customers, if applicable, to start all of the process. Things are going to change, as Brian's saying, but you like, and I think, the critical part is when if it does actually go into production, let's say mid-October, right? You don't want to be kind of caught on your heels. You want to make sure that you've got everything going. You understand the process, how it works, so you're efficient at it, so you can, keep the ball rolling and not have to take a material hit to your traffic.
The industry's shifting a little bit, right? And we want to be able to shift and evolve with the market and with what's changing, right? And I think this time between now and then, we really need to be looking at how we're doing our business within the messaging ecosystem and saying, hey, we've done it one way for a while. Let's thrive despite of it, right? Let's come up with ways to maybe go back to the drawing board and making sure that we're following all the rules to a T, and say, look, this really does give us an opportunity to go look at our business, to look at the regulations, to look at our fees, not how they affect you, but how that goes downstream to the people that use you, and really take the opportunity to use this time to kind of go through that metamorphosis, as the industry changes, become the expert in your field on how to, really increase your pass through and to help your brands. And if you're a reseller, the brands you represent, how you can really use messaging to its highest ability.
And real quick, great feedback. And I know that there was one key bullet on the last slide that we didn't get to cover, but Verizon is already digging in, and there's going to be participation. There's been some in the last week. I think that was the update that mentioned it. And there is some, there's discussions now between Verizon and the campaign registry. So speculation is there Verizon is going to be part of this program. So all three major carriers, the US Cellular and all the other regional mobile carriers, are already looking at participating if they're not already. So As that develops, we'll provide you more information on what that looks like. But as of right now, Verizon just has the standard pass-through fee schedule. So, but let's all probably expect that Verizon will participate in the program. So all of this all applies to them as well.
Yeah, business as usual right now with Verizon, but yeah, like I said, that can always change, with an email. So
great. And just before we get to the Q&A too, keep in mind both on Telly and thinQ's website, we have up-to-date surcharge pages. You can keep an eye on that. That's going to change. We're going to send out an update when it changes. We're going to send email updates when these things are altered. We're working on some additional content to make sure you have what you need. And last but not least, if you have any questions or you want to get a walkthrough of the Telly portal, you want to see how to do the registration, reach out, and our team is happy to help. Our experts are standing by to walk you through it. So some Q&A, Brian. I want to go through these. Chris had a question a little while ago about what if a brand uses multiple providers? Do they get registered multiple times?
One second, I'm just scrolling up to see if, I'm just scrolling up to get to your questions here. So if a brand has multiple providers, do they get registered? Yes. So you can, if you're a big corporation, like I said earlier, if you're Nike and you're hiring 10 different companies to do your marketing, each person that they're working with can go and register them as a brand. Now, the caveat with that is, as a total brand, again, like I said, the Wild West, how things are different. Let's say you have 200,000 messages per day per brand with T-Mobile, and you use, 2 different providers to send your messaging. Now, if one of those providers does all 200,000, the other provider won't be able to because it's based off of brand, right? So even though they're using multiple resellers to get their messaging done, they're going to be limited to themselves specifically as a brand, even though they went and had multiple companies do it. So T-Mobile, it does it that way. AT&T is going to do it campaign based. So if you go and make a campaign, they're going to relegate that based off of campaign. Your limits are going to be based off of campaign but it'll be across the board for that campaign. And so that's how you can definitely register your brand with multiple resellers if you're a big or larger company. But you are the aggregate amongst them all, you will still hit that daily limit.
Makes sense. How about how does 10DLC compare to verified toll-free with regards to these changes?
I think verified toll-free and the 10D and the campaign registry kind of are sitting in that same bucket, right? You're just going to get that improved throughput and pass-through. I think long code still has the ability to do higher pass-through than some toll-free. I'm not sure that the binds that are really out there into the toll-free space are as large as the ones that exist for 10DLC, but
the verified toll-free, right? After you fill out a form, you submit it, and I think that's the big concern on toll-free is the turnaround time to get the verification and those numbers whitelisted. But right now there's a single funnel, there's a single channel to the mobile carriers for toll-free, whereas on the long code, the 10DLC stuff, right? There's three gateway providers to the mobile network operators. So
4 now, right?
4 now.
Yeah, and I think there's more that's working towards it. So
right. And there are toll-free charges. There are pass-through fees now. So that happened at the beginning of this month. So beware for those who are looking at that. So you really want to look at toll-free. Toll-free is that legacy A2P channel that we talked about initially. But right now, is it the best fit? I think we have a slide somewhere that kind of outlines all the different 3. Short code is another option.
But look at short code. Short code goes through the same vetting process. So
yep.
What 10DLC has essentially done, it's what's happened in the space is every type of messaging platform, if it's 10DLC, toll free, short code, it's all being under the microscope now. It's all having to be vetted and made sure it's moving away from some of that spammier stuff that's out in the space.
Gotcha. So back to the campaign being 160 characters. Does the use of an emoji reduce it from 160 to say 147 or something along those lines due to encoding? How do those work?
Yeah, I think it's going to change based on and you might have some concatenation. And if you have concatenation on a message, you're obviously going to be billed for each portion of the message, and then the surcharges attached to each one of those. But I think it really depends on how they're seeing the message. So is it going to be, like the Latin one, or is it going to be, the GSM? That could have that's a good question. I don't know the answer for 100% for that one, but I do understand the question based on how it's perceived by the mobile operator. That can change the count, and it can, cause concatenation amongst the messaging. So you want to make sure that when you're building that out, you're taking that into account on your side.
Right. Nathan had a good question here. One of the previous slides had 161 characters plus is multiple campaigns. What does that mean exactly? It's 161 characters plus. Yeah. What does that mean?
Now you're past. So I think what you can do, and I need to get the answer on that one. So basically you're saying you're going over that limit. Mm-hmm. Do you have to register 2 separate campaigns, one for each section of the concatenation? And so that's a good question. And can we take a note of who asked that question?
Sure. Yep. That'll be right in the data for sure.
Thanks.
Yes. Ezra was asking, if a company that offers SMS is registered, but most of their customers are not, will those messages be delivered, or does every number need to be tied to a brand, campaign, SMS reseller, carrier?
Seems like they would hit that limit. So if they've got multiple customers feeding traffic into their brand, all of those customers are going to hit that ceiling of 200 or all the stuff that Brian mentioned. So
this is where we go back to what is being perceived. Like if you're a company and you're sending messages out for all these people you represent, who do they think the message is coming from? If they're thinking it's coming from you as the marketer, right, then you have to go in and register every campaign that you're sending out, because you're saying, hey, this is my brand as the marketing company. I'm doing it on behalf of this company, but they don't want me to use their name. Well, then you're registering as a brand to send things out. If your brands that you represent and you're a reseller, they're going to have to register each brand that they represent, right? And so if you're a reseller and you have 10 brands and you only go and register 5, and your other 5 brands start sending messages, well, come October, they could start saying, we're going to block everything that's not verified, because they're going to do it based off of campaign, right? And based off of brand. They're going to look at the campaign ID. They're going to say, is it attached to a brand? Is that brand verified, or is it unverified? If it's not verified, we're not going to pass your traffic, or we're going to impose heavy fees, to that consumer or to that company. Like these messages are going to have a big hit to them. So
I just saw that on the toll-free side a few weeks ago on the vetting process, and a big national home improvement retailer was basically contracting out to a local company to do the installs for their customer orders. And so what you're talking about here, so if you're basically sending message traffic for one of your customers, and your customers can't, their traffic doesn't match what you've got under your brand or your use case, expect a delay, right? Expect to have an issues or possible rejections. So that was on toll free, and it was a slight mess to clean that up, and we had to provide letter of authorizations and so forth. So the point of bringing that up is that you want to be prepared and have everything aligned ideally the best way you can before you start, and have everything kind of ready if you get questions about why you're the registered brand but you're sending traffic for a customer on a use case that you didn't disclose or something, right? So
yeah, good point. Devin asked this question. I think you already answered it, Brian, is, do we foresee or expect similar things to hit short codes and toll free? I think the answer is yes, that for sure. It's across the board.
There's already there, right? So, yeah. Toll free, they're going to they have some soft limits on what your pass-through rates are going to be around your numbers. And short code already has it, right? If you go through, if anyone's ever gone through the short code process, you have to basically build your campaign, send it in for approval. All the mobile operators have to approve it. And again, there's if you're trying to do that and then you start trying to send different traffic that wasn't approved over it, you're going to get shut down. Like again, the industry this is a reaction to something that they felt, was just out of hand. And so they're sinking their teeth in all over the place, right? They're saying, hey, like, do this the right way. Like, if you're going in and you're registering a campaign, then make sure you're doing the campaign that you registered, because they're gonna require, opt-in, opt-out, stop, help, all those different codes. So short code, and it's a long process. Like, I don't know if anyone's ever done that, but it's not the quickest turnaround. Neither is the toll-free stuff. So
if you're thinking about that, if you're thinking about toll-free, what is a better option? Maybe you're kind of saying, well, hey, maybe I can move to toll-free or short code to avoid some of this. Reach out to us. Let's have a discussion, and we can definitely help guide you and kind of give you a little more detailed breakdown of what to expect on each A2P channel. So that's the whole point. And talk to your account manager. I think, Tim, you had an email right there. Was it what's an email that everybody can send those questions to or ask to have conversations around?
Oh, the best thing is, support at thinQ.com. We'll get right into the ticketing system. Absolutely. Okay. And we can reach right out. Yeah. Just a couple more questions, guys. I know, man, this has gone as long as we hoped it would. There's a lot to share. One of them is, so back to that sort of 161 plus characters question, Brian, is, so if there's concatenation, that results in multiple campaigns. Is that right? Well, that's what we're trying to answer, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm going to answer.
Perfect. Okay. Another one here is, so Camille's asking, so can she use hundreds of numbers just for a campaign? But it sounds to me like that's not necessary anymore. That used to be the way it was done. Is that right?
Yeah, well, it just depends on how you're advertising. Again, like the example from earlier, if you represent a fast food chain and you're doing things, based off your store, and so you want to assign a phone number for each store, and so you need something more. AT&T and T-Mobile do this differently. T-Mobile bases this off of a brand as an entirety. AT&T bases this off of a campaign. Now, the default with AT&T, from what I was told, is about 5,000 numbers that you can use, right? Anything over 49 for a brand with T-Mobile requires a special number pull request, because they have a different internal process for adding these larger pools of number to a campaign, right? So there's a process that'll have to be done. And if you need multiple numbers, again, they're different between T-Mobile and AT&T, but if you need that additional number pool count for T-Mobile, you're going to have to reach out to an AE or your sales team, your sales associate here, and we'll help you with that form to kind of get it through. And we have to get that, send it off, get it approved so we can get that OSR data updated. So all the OSR data correlates with that campaign for proper pass-through. So
hopefully Camilla says thank you. Looks like two last questions here in case anybody else has anything else. Now's the time to put it into the chat box. What's the average approval time for a new campaign, and how do we get notified about rejections?
So there's a loop back. So if you're registering through us, there's multiple ways to do this. You don't have to use the Telly portal to register through the campaign registry. You can go and pay the $200 fee to go set up with the campaign registry. But you would have to go and select Telly, thinQ, as the connectivity partner. You can't just go randomly pick a company and expect they're going to pass your traffic, because that's not how that works, right? So you would have to choose us as your connectivity partner.
And how long does that take, Brian?
Approval, so for example, the other day when I was explaining how I went and made the two different accounts, one with the incorrect legal name and one with the accurate legal name, it was immediately approved. I made a campaign after that was approved. I think it was within 20 minutes, right? And it might have even been sooner. Because I didn't refresh the page. I was waiting for it to update. I think when I refreshed it was there. So, and the vetting takes about, I think the last time I saw it was 30 seconds. But if something doesn't get verified, that's something that we're working through, is getting that loop back from the campaign registry on what some of the reasons for that back to the customer through the portal. So that's in the works, but we can definitely open up tickets and work with the campaign registry on digging up some of that information as we're finishing out the automation process for this.
Okay. And how about rejections? How do we notify folks about rejections?
So when you go in, it'll tell you right in the portal if it was verified or unverified, right? If it's unverified, if it went through, and you'll see it rejected. You'll see it rejected right there on the page.
Got it. Chris, you're welcome. I'm glad it was helpful. Devin said, I think you may have answered this. Sorry, just real quick. Can you set multiple connectivity partners? Many folks have redundancy in place. Curious how that works.
So this is one of the updates that we've been waiting for. So good question. Right now, they have it to where you can only pick one. And so they are building what they are calling a tree. So you can basically go in and this is, if you're doing this outside of the Telly network, that's the only way you're going to get it done. If you're doing it from within the Telly portal, we are going to be the direct default connectivity partner. The only way you're going to be able to build those kind of information trees is by doing it directly with the campaign registry.
Makes sense. Oh, and somebody said, so definitely answer the question about campaign rejections. What about message rejections? How does that work?
What do you mean message rejections?
I'm
DLRs,
assuming,
so once their campaigns are approved,
right,
and they're sending, so like Ryan said, right, if you're not getting the delivery on your message content, then that can be escalated through a ticket to the carrier.
Absolutely, because this is this is a vetted system for the mobile networks, right? They're saying, hey, we've signed on to this. We're basically saying, hey, we're agreeing to these pass-throughs, right? So if you're having delivery problems, this is a sanctioned product by the mobile operators, where if your campaigns are being approved and you're sending it out and you're having delivery issues, well, yeah, we can open up tickets and we can hold their feet to the fire, so to speak, and saying, hey, you approved this. This was good. They're going to look at your content. I mean, if you're registering one content and you're sending another content, well,
that's bad, very bad, by the way.
Very bad.
If you get approved, your campaign gets approved, and you send something completely different, especially to T-Mobile.
T-Mobile have
that's bad
fees for people that
they want compliance and adherence, right?
So, so how would a customer know, for instance, if they were sending an approved message and for some reason they had deliverability issues? How would they know? I think that's really what they're trying to say.
I think
the message,
downloading the DLRs and making sure what their pass-through looks like.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, that was quite an hour that we spent here on 10 DLC A2P. Appreciate the update. Even during this call, I learned a few new things. And this is not your father's Wild West. I don't know, I'm mixing metaphors now, but things have changed so much in the last, few months, let alone few weeks. Really appreciate your time and attention in putting this content together. Everybody on this call, obviously, if you're working with thinQ or Telly, we're going to keep in touch with you. Make sure you keep an eye on our blog in particular. And there's also a sign up link in there. You can sign up to get these notifications. We'll keep it going because this thing is going to continue to change. So definitely keep an eye on thinQ and Telly for both of those. But just in the interest of time, man, so many great questions. I really appreciate everybody's participation. I'm actually excited to say we had 100% of people stay from minute one to the hour. That is fantastic. So obviously engaging, that's as a marketer, that does me good. We're going to keep giving you guys this great content and keeping you informed. So more to come on that. But
and hopefully we get some small tutorial videos on how to register and all that good stuff. And please be patient with us, as this is a
evolving.
It keeps changing on us. So we're going to do our best to keep current updated with you guys as more information flows into us. So
that's right. And last but not least, again, if you have any questions along the way, just send a quick email to support@thinq.com, and that'll get to us. That'll get to the Telly team. That'll get to the thinQ team. We'll generate a ticket, and we will get you all the answers you need. And by the way, one final thing. We'd love for you to go over to Telly and sign up to get a demo. We'd love to show you the campaign registry and give you a look around and show you some of our other capabilities and talk to you about your unique use case. Make sure we're getting the right type of texting turned on for you based on the types of messages and the customers you're working for. And that's what we're here to do. We're not here to have a cookie cutter solution. We're here to have a customized solution for you and your use cases. So with that, thanks again, Scott. Thanks again, Brian. And thanks to everybody today for being on the call.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good day.